Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama.
Hare Krishna, Dandas pranams to all the devotees who have joined here. So today we have His Grace Sri Bhagavat Prabhu, who is going to walk us through the shlokas. So Prabhu, thank you so much for joining and then for giving us this association. So welcome Prabhu on behalf of everyone, welcoming you formally for the session. And without taking much time, Prabhu, over to you. So kindly go ahead and then share the nectar. Let me know if you want me to share, or you will go ahead.
I will share, Prabhu. Can you please give me co-host rights? I'll
do that. I'll do that right away. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prasannatma Balaram Prabhuji. Dear devotees, welcome everyone. I would like to first of all express my gratitude and thankfulness for giving me this opportunity to the Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya team, especially Sri Shankar Shanitaya Prabhu. I would also like to seek the blessings of all the assembled Vaishnavas so that I can speak properly on these verses. And I have referred to some notes of senior devotees and of course Prabhupada purports. So please bless me so that I am able to connect all these verses properly. Is my audio fine, Prabhuji?
Yes, Prabhu, we can hear you well.
Okay, fine.
The video is also great. So
okay, fine. Then I'll start. Okay. So today we'll be discussing two verses, verses number 76 and 77 from this 29th chapter, talks between King Prachina Bhari and Narada Muni. First we'll read the verses, translation and the purport, and then we'll begin the discussion. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The verses are Yathatrina Jalukeyam Napayati Apayati Cha Natyajen Mriyamahanopi Pragdeha Bimatim Janaha. Yathatrina Jalukeyam Napayati Apayati Cha Natyajen Mriyamahanopi Pragdeha Bimatim Janaha. Yathatrina Jalukeyam Napayati apayati cha natyajen mriyamanopi pragdeha bimatim janaha. 77. Yavad anyam na vindeta vyavadhanena karmanam mana eva manushyendra bhutanam bhavanam. Yavad anyam na vindeta vyavadhanena karmanam mana eva manushyendra bhutanam bhavanam. Yavadanyam na vindeta vyavadhanena karmanam mana eva manushyendra bhutanam bhava bhavanam. The transliteration word to word meaning yatha, as trina chaluka, caterpillar, yam, this, na apayati, does not go, apayati, goes, cha, also, na, not, tyajet, gives up, mriyamanaha, at the point of death, api, even, prak, former, deha, with the body, abhimatim, identification, janaha, a person, yavat, as long as, anyam, another, na, not, vindeta, obtains, vyavadhanena, by the termination, karmanam, of fruitive activities, manaha, mind, eva, certainly, manushya, indra, O ruler of men, bhutanam, of all living entities, bhava, of material existence, bhavanam, the cause. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: the caterpillar transports itself from one leaf to another by capturing one leaf before giving up the other. Similarly, according to his previous work, the living entity must capture another body before giving up the one he has. This is because the mind is the reservoir of all kinds of desires. So we'll read the purport also. A living entity too much absorbed in material activity becomes very much attracted to the material body. Even at the point of death, he thinks of his present body and the relatives connected to it. Thus, he remains fully absorbed in the bodily conception of life, so much so that even at the point of death, he abhors leaving his present body. Sometimes it is found that a person on the verge of death remains in a coma for many days before giving up the body. This is common among so called leaders and politicians who think that without their presence, the entire country and all society will be in chaos. This is called Maya. Political leaders do not like to leave their political posts, so that and they either have to be shot by an enemy or obliged to leave by the arrival of death. By superior engagement, a living entity is offered another body, but because of his attraction to the present body, he does not like to transfer himself to another body. Thus, he is forced to accept another body by the laws of nature, which is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita as Prakrite Kriyamanani Gunai Karmani Sarvashah Ahankara Vimudhatma Kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. Material nature is very strong, and the material modes force one to accept another body. This force is visible when the living entity transmigrates from a superior body into an inferior one. One who acts like a dog or hog in the present body will certainly be forced to accept the body of a dog or hog in the next life. A person may be enjoying the body of a prime minister or a president, but when he understands that he will be forced to accept the body of a dog or hog, he chooses not to leave the present body. Therefore, he lies in a coma many days before death. This has been experienced by many politicians at the time of death. The conclusion is that the next body is already determined by superior control. The living entity immediately gives up the present body and enters another. Sometimes in the present body, the living entity feels that many of his desires and imaginations are not fulfilled. Those who are overly attracted to their life situation are forced to remain in a ghostly body and are not allowed to accept another gross body. Even in the body of a ghost, they create disturbances for neighbors and relatives. The mind is a prime cause of such a situation. According to one's mind, different types of bodies are generated, and one is forced to accept them. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 8.6, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam Tvajati Ante Kalevaram. Tam Tam Evaiti Kaunteya Sada Tad Bhava Bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. Within one's body and mind, one can think as either a dog or a god, and the next life is offered to him accordingly. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 13.22. Purusha prakritisto hi bhunte prakritijan gunan karanam guna sangasyo sad ashad yoni janmashu. The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus, he meets with good and evil among various species. The living entity may transmigrate to either a superior or inferior body according to his association with the modes of material nature. So if he associates with the mode of ignorance, he gets the body of an animal or an inferior man. But if he associates with the mode of goodness or passion, he gets a body accordingly. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14.18. Udvam gachanti satvastha madhye tishtanti rajasah chaghanya guna vrittista adho gachanti tamasaha. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. The root cause of one's association is a mind. This great Krishna consciousness movement is the greatest boon to human society because it is teaching everyone to think always of Krishna by executing devotional service. In this way, at the end of life, one may be transferred to the association of Krishna. This is technically called Nitya Leela Pravishta. Entering into the planet Guroloka Vrindavan, Bhagavad Gita 18.55 explains, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyashtasmi tatvataha tato mam tatvato gnatva vishate tadanantaram. One can understand the Supreme Personality as he is only by devotional service. And one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. After the mind is completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, one can enter the planet known as Goloka Vrindavan. To enter the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to understand Krishna. The process of understanding Krishna is devotional service. After understanding Krishna as he is, one can become eligible to enter Krishna Loka and associate with him. The mind is a cause of such an exalted position. The mind can also get one a body like those of dogs and hawks. To absorb the mind always in Krishna consciousness is therefore the greatest perfection of human life. Om Agnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Salakaya Chakshurulmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Katamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shriyuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaganalita Sri Vishakanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatadeshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरि प्रिये. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद. हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Hare Krishna. Once again, welcome you all to this morning Bhagavatam class. So Prabhupada is nicely explaining the theme of this verse. The theme of this verse is transmigration of the soul from one body to another body. So Prabhupada is explaining how the living entity under the influence of the material modes is under the bodily conception of life, because the bodily conception of life comes from the fact that one strongly identified with the body and its other paraphernalia or the other attachments that come with the body. So the other relatives or other wealth and other power and prestige connected with the body to such an extent that when one is even about to leave the body, the soul is not willing to give up because it is so much attached. And in one sense, it's Prabhupada also mentions in the purport that it is fearful of what could be its future destination. The living entity clearly knows that if in a particular body he is enjoying certain facilities, the living entity knows for sure that he has to give up those facilities, and what is the guarantee that those facilities may be rewarded again? Because to attain those facilities, the living entity would have gone through so much of struggle, hard work, and also maybe through unfavorable means. So Prabhupada is mentioning, giving the example of leaders and politicians, but it is also applicable to people in general that who doesn't want to leave a particular body because of its strong attachment. Further, it's like a nice flow. Prabhupada is explaining how the living entity when under the spell of illusion, that's called the maya, right? When we are disconnected with the reality, we are not able to see the reality, which is we are not this body. We identify this with this body. So under the spell of this illusion, which is consisting of the material nature of the three modes, act upon the body and force them to do certain activities. So these activities are a result of the desires which are coming from the mind. So the root cause is the mind. The mind is having many desires, and even if we go further, the mind is having so many desires because the mind is in contact with the senses. The senses are contacting the sense object. The sense objects are always 24 cross 7 vigilant, or like they are perceiving things that are going across the body person, what is happening within and without. So they are the sense objects are always perceiving, grasping, absorbing, and the senses are then perceiving or enjoying those the sense objects. So the mind is registering all of these. So it is creating new desires. The old ones are surfacing again in newer ways, and the sometimes the older ones, old desires may not be fulfilled to our satisfaction, so they are always there. So in this way, the desires are unlimited and they're always there. The mind is just, as we say, mind is just the function of the mind is to accept and reject, or purpose is thinking, feeling, willing. So it kind of has this, registers all these um, um, desires of the living entity, and propels or through the medium of this material nature, which is composed of the three gunas. It makes the living entity work. So when the living entity works, so then naturally, as per Bhagavad Gita, there is action, there is an opposite reaction, which could be good or bad, and that's what forces the living entity to continue in this body. And further, in the purport, Prabhupada mentions if we behave like a dog, we'll get the body of a dog, and if we behave godly, we'll get the body of a godly uh, uh, entity, like a demigod or someone. Or if we behave like a devotee, we get to enter into the Lord's abode and take part in Lord's eternal pastimes. But what is the link that can help us enter into this realm or the abode of the Lord? Prabhupada mentions that is the mind. Mind is the root cause. So mind is can transport us. So the mind being here, even in Brahma Samhita it says like the speed of the mind. It's the speed of the mind is compared. It's like being here, we can be in Goloka, which no material modes of transport can transport us into Goloka. So that's why the speed of mind is superior. In fact, in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says it is easy to control the wind, but it is not easy to control the mind, because that is the strong nature of the mind. And further, we also have heard many times that how mind is one's best friend if controlled, and is a worst enemy if not controlled. So Prabhupada, that's very specifically, and this verse also focuses that the mind is a reservoir of all kinds of desires, Hence, to control the mind is the most essential aspect. First of all, a living entity who should understand that one is not he's not this body, and should understand there is something beyond this, because if one doesn't understand there is something beyond this, one considers the present living body to be in all its all. Why should one do take up to devotional service? I get this body, I enjoy it to the fullest extent, or maybe do not enjoy it and then I leave it. But unless one understands that either there is great danger ahead of him. So then that the great danger is basically Prabhupada mentioning that the material modes force one to accept another body. It's not that something is in our control, we are under the force of the material nature. So that is the greatest danger. So unless one understands this greatest danger, then one can really think of how to get out of this danger. And that thinking is provided, Prabhupada is saying, is provided in this purport by like here he mentions, this great Krishna consciousness movement is the greatest boon to human society, because it is teaching everyone to think always of Krishna. Why always of Krishna? Because as this purport clearly scientifically explains, how based on one's thoughts, desires, one's accumulates throughout one's life, one will be awarded another body. So in one sense, what it is saying is, we take birth on what we associate with, right? Based on what the mental state we develop, we are preparing our next body. Scientifically, this transmigration is explained here. So even one doesn't understand this scientific transmigration, then one is forced to take up a lower body. Like Prabhupada is mentioning, the force of the material nature is visible when one is forced to take up a lower body. In human body, if we go up, like in terms of a demigod body, or in the body of the sages in the Tapa Satyaloka, it is considered a progressive path of the living entity's journey in this material world. But when one is forced to take up lower bodies, which is under the jurisdiction of ignorance, one can see that they are being downgraded or they're being degraded. So that's the reason Prabhupada is mentioning that one has to be the greatest need in the society is to teach everyone of teach everyone Krishna consciousness, because that will help them elevate oneself. So first, as to anyone, to people in general, that's why we need to tell them this core philosophy of birth and rebirth, what is awaiting them, not just them. This is a principle or a philosophy that we should recollect at least daily once, because that would help us keep our focus and keep our goal in mind. So that's why we should help every common living entity, whether that's why we begin with the science of self-realization, right? The course begins with science of self-realization, wherein one gets to understand that one is emphasized, and one is made to know that one should start thinking about what is there after this life, what happens to us after this life. So that is the root, that is a crux of what Prabhupada is explaining in this purport. So, of course, the whole, when we take up the scriptures, beginning with Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and Chaitanya Charitamrita, and many other scriptures, this point is explained repeatedly. In fact, the same, very similar analogy is also repeated by Vasudev when Kamsa was trying to kill Devaki on the chariot, because he heard that Devaki's the child of Devaki will be the cause of his death. So when he was about to kill Devaki, Vasudev in fact explains him this concept of the transmigration of the body, and then exactly the same analogy he gives, like what we have seen, like the caterpillar, just like the caterpillar, yatha trina jalukeyam. And he also gives like example few more analogies, like how when we walk, we lift one foot and put the foot again on the earth, and then the other foot is we take it off from the earth, and likewise we move forward. And also like how a worm transports itself from one leaf of the vegetable to another leaf. We would have seen that in the National Geographic channels, how it slowly moves and jumps onto another leaves, and like that it moves from one leaf to another. So these are many examples, and in fact Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita gives the example of in a simple example how just like we change our clothes, we give up our old clothes and take up new clothes, and in the same lifetime itself how we are changing the bodies. So this point is repeatedly stressed because that is the core of what philosophy, and that is what actually propels the living entity, the conditioned living entity. See, the conditioned living entity is here because he is not pure. He wants to enjoy separately from the Lord. So it's not like when the conditioned living entity is told about Lord, devotional substance, Bhagavan, Bhakti, the immediately he becomes pure. That is very rare. Then that living entity is not conditioned. He's maybe a Karana Jarma or some kind of a pure devotee who has taken here just for some other purpose. So generally the living entity is conditioned. So the living entity because of its conditioned nature has to be informed about this its condition. What is it condition? This is it's just been, the living entity is just being tossed around in various bodies. So Prabhupada further says many places that in spite of such scientifically explained, so as we discussed many times even today, how scientifically in fact Narada Muni is explaining that in the scientifically, if we see all the verses that we have been discussing right from 55 onwards or so, we have been discussing in this Nityam Bhagavata series. It's a scientific explanation how the transmigration happens, but still many are not willing to accept. So it's the unfortunate situation. Then in that case, the only way to explain it, because it's a demonic nature. The demonic nature or the demonic tendency is nothing but to not accept things presented in the scriptures. So for them, the destination is, as explained in this purport and also by Krishna in 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, that and they who are demoniac, they'll be forced, they'll be perpetually cast in this cycle of repeated birth and death. And it's not just repeated birth and death. The most disturbing fact is they'll be thrown into various demonic species and also abominable species of life. So one may say, okay, what is there? If I'm forced to leave this body, I'll get some body, but not all, only it's only in human body we have some sense of sanity, so to say. All other bodies below the human body, there is no sanity, and there is no there is no peacefulness, so to say. They are all in complete ignorance. So it's not just saying that yes, whatever happens, I'll get another body. But as Krishna is mentioning, they are thrown into such an abominable and demonic species that it becomes very difficult for them to get out of this repeated birth and death. So here another point we could discuss is in this sequence of events of how the transmigration happens, the importance of the fruitive activities or the activities. So the same point is mentioned in the pastime of Bharat Maharaj, when Bharat Maharaj, in fact, he lives. He was the king of the entire. He was the emperor, not even the king, the emperor of the world. He leaves such a position because he sees them as a stumbling blocks of on his path towards perfection, to attain perfection. He leaves them and he goes to the forest to perform austerities and penances. But he sees a deer, and he gets attracted to the deer, and eventually at the time of the death his consciousness was completely engrossed in the thoughts of the deer, and he takes the body of a deer. So there Sukadeva Goswami mentions in the verse that how can one explain? Of course, we say it's the association, lack of association, but what led him to that point is the fruitive activities. This was definitely due to his karma. Simply put, it's not even fruitive activities, it's the karma that he has done in the past. It will definitely haunt us. So unless that the bag of karma is completely destroyed, the bag of material karma, so it will haunt us in one way or the other, and make us, how much ever determined we are, it will eventually um, deviate us from remembering the Lord, forget about on a daily basis, even at the time of the death. So that's why this so the point here is, it's only that as we always heard, even yesterday we were hearing the karmani nirdhati kintucha bhakti bhajam. So only bhakti can destroy this karma, and it can uproot all the desires within our heart. So that's why Prabhupada is also mentioning the solution. The solution is also mentioned. The causes are also mentioned. The process of transmigration is mentioned, and the solution is also mentioned. The solution is only bhakti, because one may, just like in the case of Bharat Maharaj, one may do austerities, cease oneself from material activities, perform severe levels of austerities and detachment, but still that avashesha of that karma can haunt us back and derail us from our path of success. So ultimately, so what do we conclude out of all this? So it's all happening under some divine arrangement. So even in case of Bharat Maharaj, we see, fortunately he was able to remember his past life, and that's where Sukadeva Goswami says it's the mercy of the Lord, because he has performed devotional service. It's not that this process is happening on its own, because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, material nature is under his control, right? Maya Jakshena Prakriti, the material nature is under his control. It is acting under his direction. So the God has Supreme Krishna has created rules, he can change them also. So it's not like if one remembers something due to the laws, arrangement of the laws, it's not that it happens. Krishna can change that for devotees especially. So ultimately, is the driving factor in all the transmigration is Krishna. It's yes, we say the material under the in technical terms, we say under the spell of the illusion, under the spell of material nature, under the spell of the three gunas, and we can go on explaining further than what we are discussing. In fact, the how the influences of the 16 the karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, so on. Technically, we can go on and on, but it's ultimately everything is happening under the direction of Krishna. How do we know that? Because Krishna himself is saying in Bhagavad Gita, Ishvarah sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart and is directing the wanderings of all living entities. So that we know from 18, it's in the 18th chapter towards the end. So Krishna is saying, so in that purport, Prabhupada is saying that the Lord is there. The Lord is directing the wandering of the living entities. He is making them forget his past deeds or remember as per what the living entity deserves. So then as soon as the living entity thinks of a particular type of a body, the Krishna puts him in that body, and then he's forced to act in that way. So in that purport, Prabhupada mentioning these points, Prabhupada says, so it is very much evident that the living entity is non-independent. So that's what ultimately we have to come to this conclusion, especially in relation to, in context of today's theme, that we are not independent. So but we are actually dependent on the supremely independent Lord. So one should think himself that they are completely dependent on the Lord, and then this independent Lord can help us put under his shelter. So therefore it becomes, once Prabhupada concludes the purpose saying, therefore by understanding all of this, it becomes one's duty. It becomes one duty. In fact, duty means that not even taking care of our self in best interest, we all sometimes we say in classes, it's actually in our best interest to surrender to the Supreme Lord, or to understand the fact that we are not dependent, or to understand the fact that we are not the supreme enjoyers. But Prabhupada says that forget about best interest. So best interest also sometimes has a little bit of the connotation, or the intention is that we are seeking something better for us. But if in fact, if it is better or not, one's duty is to surrender to the Lord. So however, one does not. So in fact, Prachina Barihi himself, because if you see this chapter, there are two sections. First section, Narada Muni explains him the science of self-realization, but in response to the question of Prachina Bari, that whatever you said is so meaningful and so uh, obvious or so natural, like just like how we have talked about so many examples, like the caterpillar example here, or like the movement of the feet, or the changing of the old clothes. It seems so natural and so obvious. Then why don't the teachers, when he is referring to the teachers, his teachers who have engaged him in him being an expert karmakandi, have never been able to tell him that this is the fact that he should go beyond these fruitive activities, because it's one thing. The two Prahlad Maharaj clearly gives the two reasons for this. One reason, because it's like a blind man following another blind person. A blind man is following and falls into a ditch, and another blind man, not knowing where this blind man is going, he's just following him, thinking he will take him to the ditch. It's just as simple as that. And the other reason is completely engrossed by the sense gratification, by the desire to enjoy the senses, even understanding there is not much happiness, or that is not the end goal. Nate vidu swartha gatim hi Vishnu, not knowing that the understanding that the ultimate goal of life is to return home, or Vishnu, or to engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. uh, One continues to tread down this path of sense gratification. So, and many examples are given. So even the reason Prabhupada mentioning that the highest, in fact, the very beautiful, if we want to meditate, one takeaway in today's purport and verse is to absorb the mind always in Krishna consciousness is therefore the greatest perfection of human life. Because only, and then of course, here Krishna says, sorry, Prabhupada says the process of understanding Krishna is devotional service, because other paths like karma, gnana, they themselves cannot help us understand Krishna. Only the path of bhakti can directly help us understand Krishna in truth. And because Krishna himself states that. And why? Because when we engage in a devotional service, we are in constant association with Krishna, and when we are constant association with a particular person, we get to know that person. We get to know that person in full. So that is as simple. So the highest philosophical truths are very simple, but it's very difficult to understand because of our conditioning. Otherwise, the whole of the Vedanta sutras, everything can be explained in few two three few sentences, right? A handful of sentences. But unfortunately, it is very difficult to understand and apply, because it is due to a conditioning, like we discussed. It is due to a strong desire for sense gratification, strong desire to enjoy separately from the Lord. Uh, Further, I wanted to share this point, because I felt when I heard, I felt I was impacted by that, and then I felt it's also relates to this verse. Like we talked about how Bhagavad Gita, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is talking about this transmigration of the soul, the changing of the bodies. So it's just talking about that. And then Srimad Bhagavatam is giving examples like Bharat Maharaj, and many examples how by thinking, and in fact, how can we forget Parikshit Maharaj? The whole of Bhagavatam itself came into existence in one sense, because Parikshit Maharaj wanted to know what to do, what is the prime duty of a person who is about to leave the body. So the Bhagavatam came into existence. So naturally, Bhagavatam is talking about what will happen when one thinks about what one should think about at the time of that, what one should think on what will happen. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are many so live examples and vivid, impactful examples like that. In this lifetime itself, one can change one's body. How is that possible? Because if we change our consciousness, it's almost like we have changed our body from material to spiritual. So it's called Jivan Mukta. The technical term is Jivan Mukta. While being in this body, which is actually a conditioned body, one can be liberated. And how? So one example or one's pastime, through which we can understand, we can relate that particular pastime, because we are also in connection with devotional service, but still we are not able to fully um, uh, absorb in that bliss, because there is this pastime that comes towards the end of or in Antyalila, wherein Mahaprabhu is in Jagannath Puri. We know it's mentioned in Antyalila, in his final pastimes, he was completely absorbed in thinking about Radha and Krishna's pastime. He was actually maddened. He was constantly singing and dancing in ecstatic love. So there was no night, morning, day, afternoon. So he would do that 24 hours a day. So once towards the night, when he was wandering the sea, he saw there was full moon night, and the full moon was reflecting in the sea water. He immediately thought about Yamuna, and just like how Krishna would jump into Yamuna to perform water pastimes with the gopis, he immediately jumped into the Yamuna. So when the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu associates could not find him where he was, they were going all around, and they were wandering all around where to find him. They found finally they decided to make some groups, and one group went into one direction thinking that, oh, he had gone by the sea, so let's go and find him out. So then it is mentioned that so almost at the in one of the so when the devotees were going in one direction, they meet a fisherman, so who is actually he's actually laughing, crying, dancing, and repeating the name of Hari Hari. But at the same time, he was fearful. He was mad. He was fearful. So seeing this kind of a weird behavior, they kind of understood and also figured it out. Maybe this person would know. And then when they approach him, they ask him, "Why are you behaving like this?" So he says that, actually, I'm a fisherman. I do go on a night, on every night, to fish for fishing. And today, when I put my net in the water, I found a heavy, I mean, something heavy came. So when I looked at something golden looking body, but that body was very loose and it was elongated, but it was muttering. Sometimes it was unconscious, it was muttering something. But when I just touched, suddenly there's torrents of water coming out of my eyes. I'm feeling ecstatic. I'm unable to contain myself. I'm chanting Hari Hari, but I'm so feared. I think it's a ghost. I feel a ghost has possessed me. So I'm just running from there to find an expert exorcist or someone who will help me relieve this ghost. Then Sarup Damodar Prabhu understands. Then he realizes that he has touched none other than the Supreme Lord, the embodiment of ecstatic devotional service. And he then tells him that it's not ghost. And in a funny way, he tells, "I will, don't worry, I'm an expert exorcist." And he puts some head on his head, and just as if chanting three mantras, he just slaps him 3-4 times and then says, "You're now fine." So it's like uh, this person who happens to know nothing about devotion service, he's very farly even to think of connected with devotional service. Just with a simple touch of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he becomes ecstatic, and he just chants. But unfortunately, due to his conditioning, he's not able to absorb that or release that bliss, and he thinks something else will actually save him. Just like in keeping in tune with that example of the caterpillar, Prabhupada also mentioned this analogy of caterpillar and a butterfly, like how caterpillar in the same life, a caterpillar thinking about a butterfly becomes a butterfly. So likewise, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So we know also this Namak Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. Nitya Mukto Nityam Shuddho Nitya Mukto Bhinnatvam Namanamino. I couldn't recollect the last part, but it what it says is the name is non-different from Krishna. So the same Gauranga Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna with the embodiment of Bhakti, Srimati Radharani, is present in terms of with us with the in the holy name, and we are constantly associating with it. But just like that, fishermen, we think we are not able to release that because we are unable to completely put our faith and put our full focus and attention and put our full put our full what do you say, our intentions in chanting to receive supreme love of Godhead. So in conclusion, what I want to conclude here is Prabhupada many times mentions that the devotion, the human form of life is very late. Durlabham manusham janma, right? It is obtained after 8.4, transmigrating in 8.4 million species. So once if we miss this, what is the chance that we'll get? So even if we just do a simple mathematical calculation, if we calculate, okay, 10 years on average in one species, so it becomes 8.4 crore, something like that. So it's a long time before we get human birth, and what to speak of human birth, taking birth in and getting a chance as a devotee, perform devotional service, sadhana bhakti. So it's a big rare of the rare opportunities. So why do we want to misutilize or lose that opportunity? So Prabhupada says that the key to open the spiritual world is holy name, because as he says here, the root cause of all this material attachment is the mind, and the mind can only be engaged like Paramadrishma Nivartante, engaged in higher taste easily by the chanting the holy name of the Lord. And even Rupa Goswami instructs us, Sevan Mukha hi jivado. So Sevan Mukha hi jivado. So by engaging in devotional service, which begins with uh, the engagement of the tongue in chanting or taking prasadam or talking about Krishna. So these are the prime activities through which we can engage our mind in Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada also, when he talks about how rare is an opportunity of a human body, and how rare is an opportunity to be born as a devotee, he talks about how even demigods want to take birth in human body to take part in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Lila. So in one sense, being in ISKCON and followers of Srila Prabhupada, we already have this opportunity that demigods are uh, kind of willing to degrade or downgrade, like we talked about, right? Going from one body to another body, if from human to other bodies, it's called upgrade. It's a progressive path, but actually when it's in the reverse direction, it's a force. So but the demigods, by their own willingness, they want to take birth in human body because they know what value the human birth offers, especially when they get a chance to perform in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela pastime. So as ISKCON devotees, we have many rare opportunities. So it's not just human birth, we are able to understand Krishna, we're able to understand Krishna in the line of Mahaprabhu, in the mood of Gaudiya Parampara. So it's such a rare opportunity. So I was hearing one devotee was saying, so it's like when we look at the river, the flow of the river, when the current is very strong, it goes in one direction. Even though there are many obstacles like pebbles, big stones, it still blocks them. And sometimes we see the avalanches or some landslides, the water just kind of comes with great force. So one just needs to dive into that river and go with the flow and merge into this ocean of pure transcendental bliss, which is the bhakti, bhakti, Krishna prema. So, so in conclusion, we have seen that whatever we think in our in this body will become our will become that in our next body. So it's like in a place where there are a lot of CCTVs and cameras, we vigilance there, we ensure that we kind of put our best behavior. So likewise, and then the camera kind of clicks, and then if you do a bad behavior, it tells this is what you have done, hence you are liable for this. So likewise, if we are constantly careful of what our behavior is, so at the moment of that capturing the death, so we will come out clean, because our behavior will naturally be what we have been practicing. So that's what we should adhere, I mean, aspire for. So just like how in this over the last 10 15 verses from, or 20 verses, we are talking about gross body, subtle body. The gross body is there, the subtle body is actually carrying the the soul from one body to another. So there is, in one sense we can say, there is gross devotional service. I mean, it's not gross devotional service, there's devotional service that we do outwardly, and there is devotional service that is inward. So outwardly we may do in terms of quantity, or it can be sometimes by influenced by certain factors, we may do it as a show off, but it's what the inward devotional service, the subtle devotional service, the qualities, just like, and what are those qualities? Again, Mahaprabhu tells us, like Ainanda tanuj kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavam budau, like na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye mama janmani. So these are the qualities that we should develop internally, so that then our outward and inward becomes sync, and then we just don't do it for the sake of doing. And as we just talked about, it's the subtle devotion service that actually can carry us, because sometimes the quantity, Prabhupada, and also I've heard the amount of sukriti, piety that we are aggregating by doing devotional service, by doing austerities and ekadasi, can actually transport us to a very heavenly positions, unless we develop that uh, inward or the subtle devotion service, which kind of helps us to uproot the root of the material desires, which is basically the enjoying propensity. So unless this subtle devotional service we make it strong, the I mean, in one way, in one ways we can say the outward devotional service is quantity, and the inward devotional service is the quality. So the quantity may be there, like chanting 16 rounds, but if we also add the quality, so then can also, just like how that one foot is taking, when we taking one foot, leaving one foot and putting another foot on the ground, and how that example of caterpillar and the worm will be short, slowly, gradually, but steadily progressing towards Krishna. And Prabhupada also mentions that, he continuously mentions that it is the duty of a sadhaka to ensure that he molds his life in such a way that we gradually come to the stage of constantly chanting Hare Krishna. So in this connection, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also says, like in this prayer, Bhuliye Tomara, like how I forgot, because uh, the one of the causes for this sense, the living entities continuous material existence, is forgetfulness of relation with Krishna, right? So he says that like a baby in the a baby in that prayer, I'm just summarizing that prayer. So he says the baby in his mother's womb prays to Krishna that after coming to out, or coming out in the material world, I will be a great devotee, but as soon as I'll be a great devotee of yours, but as soon as they come out, the baby comes out, he's in this, becomes illusioned, and then he forgets his promise. And then as he goes up, he feels that this material world is a safe place, and all the material achievements are great accomplishments, or the material possessions are great achievements. He thinks in that way, and that way day and night passes, and once he approaches near death, then he thinks about Krishna, and he's concerned what his fate will be. So all his important time is lost, and now he's concerned about what will happen. So Prabhupada, luckily all of us are in this process where we still have some time with us. We are not at that moment, hopefully. So we have time at our hands, wherein we can judiciously utilize this time to mold our mind, or engage our mind in the devotional service of the Lord, which is of which the most important activity is chanting the holy name. So if we come to the platform of Shuddhanam, it will automatically help us And then if we are able to chant the Shuddhanam, then as we talked about this point, the subtle devotional service or the inward devotional service becomes manifest in its full, and then we will be able to go back to Godhead. So I would like to conclude. Conclude with the points that we discussed about the scientific process of the transmigration of the soul, and what are the various factors. But ultimately, whatever may be the factors, we could discuss a number of factors that is contributing to this scientific process, but ultimately it is happening under the direction of Krishna. So it is important for us to understand that we are not independent. We are always under the control. Better to be under the direct control of the Lord, and hence take up to devotional service, which will basically clear the mind. Cheto darpana marjanam. In fact, the Sikshashtakam starts with saying Cheto darpana marjanam, clear the dust on the mirror of the mind so that we could see uh, things as they are, which is basically understanding or becoming ourselves free from the bodily concept of life, which Prabhupada mentions many a times in this purport. So devotees can correct or share any reflections, or if they have anything to add, please do so. Thank you again for your time.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. So thank you for the wonderful class. I think you kind of covered the entire thing and then put it across in a very nice capsule for all of us. In terms of the philosophy, completely covered the Sanatan Dharma and explained with the examples of caterpillar. And I like that example of how we are under camera, under surveillance. Then the best of our behavior is brought out willingly because of that. So somewhere, if we could get it into our minds that we are always under camera, then the way we interact with the with everybody will be so much more better. So thanks for that example, Prabhu. And also, I think you covered everything: Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and then about how the mind can be a friend and a foe, and how we need to just that particular link, of how the transmigration happens. So it was wonderful, Prabhu, and then how you concluded with the importance of devotional service. Thank you so much. So now devotees request you all to kindly go ahead and then put your comments, add your comments or questions. I'm sure Prabhu will be happy to take over to all of you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. The best was that fisherman touching Prabhu and get excited, the way you described. It's very nice. He doesn't know who's Mahaprabhu, but just touching him and the way Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya solves the problem. Very nice, Prabhu. Very nice, wonderful class.
Hare
Dandavat.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. Dandavat Pranam, Prabhuji. So all these days I was thinking my mind is very, very bad. So how to chant the holy name? But today you told one point, our mind is the only way which takes us to even to Golok Vrindavan. I was so happy. Yes, we had to just feel Krishna bhakti in our mind so that it will take us back to Godhead. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
So Hare Krishna. Anyone else has got any other comments or questions? Please go ahead.
Prabhu, one small question, Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji, please.
Prabhu, even though we want to keep, feel Krishna bhakti and Krishna sevas and Krishna thoughts in our mind, even after that it get bewildered. It will get attracted to all other things, Prabhuji. So what is the solution, Prabhu? How to attract back to Krishna's lotus feet?
Yeah, so in this connection only, when I was reading few other things, what clearly mentions that it's only the association with saintly persons. So if we in I think it's somewhere in that Harinama Chintamani where Bhaktivinoda Thakur is talking about the conversations between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur. If we are not able to get some ruchi, or if you are not able to do something, then associate with someone who is able to do that. So once we are able to associate, we have to deliberately practice it. So I think there is no shortcut here. So it's just if taking inspiration and practicing it. So that's what I've heard or read when I was preparing for this class.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Wonderful answers. Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so thank you so much once again, Prabhu, for your association for the nectar. I think since there aren't any more questions, so we can end the session today. So you can do the Vaishnava pranams, Prabhu.
Sure, Prabhu. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu vyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti Vaishnava bhakta vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, and wishing everyone a wonderful day, Krishna conscious day. So I'll end the session for everyone. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much once again.
Hare Krishna.